This is another video I'm making on some more advanced printing. We're going to cover some of the basics in printing as well. So looking at a simple print statement, we have print and then we have a text string afterwards. We then set some variables. We set dep1, num2, and text1 equal to some string variables for the text1 and some floating points for the num1 and num2. And then we're going to print the floating point, print the text. If you see, we use a comma to print a list of the variables. And of course, we can do the list as floating point and the text. And as you can see, they can all work together. If we look at some more advanced, we do the exact same thing, but then we use the plus sign to add the text variable to a text string in a print statement. Here we use the string method, the string function, to change the floating point variable into a string. We don't change the variable. All we do is take the floating point and send it to the string function with output, which outputs the string version of the floating point. So the floating point is still a floating point, but using this method, it outputs it to be used in the print statement. And then we use the fprint method, which we'll look at in a few minutes. We can also print the text and the floating point in the string as well. So if we run that, you can see they all work. This is the one that we're going to talk about in more detail in a few minutes. If we also look at the floating points here, we can use the formatted output, not with the F here for floating point and the percent here, and then list the values we want, and they will print, as you can see here, based on the number of decimal places we want to show. You can see we wanted to show 4 decimal places for this one, but only 1 decimal place here. And then we can print the values straight from strings that do the same way, and we get the same values here. It's printed, and then we have nothing in number 2 because you can see it's 0.00, and if we're only doing 1 decimal place, it's not going to be there. If I change it to 5 decimal places, you can see the value eventually shows up. And then we can use the percent to put the strings and the variables at the end of the print statement, and they get substituted in. So you can see the percent %s takes the string variable, and then the just percent %f gets the floating point, which goes in there, and then I have the 3.5 to designate how precise I want, or the precision I want to use in the print statement, and that would be right here. You can see that comes out with the subtext and then the floating point, and then formatted as we wanted it. I talked about the new line and the tab before. I just did some examples of that here. And of course, if you want to do quotes, if you use double quotes to close your strings in your print statement, if you can use your single quotes to print them, if you use your single quotes to enclose your strings, you can use double quotes inside the strings. And as you can see, you can use single quotes or double quotes. Can be printed if you need to in your print statement. Now let's look at the fprinting. So we set some variables here. We set some string variables. We set some floating points. And as you can see here, if we do f before the parentheses inside a print statement, we're going to do a formatted print, and then we use the brackets, and we can print out all the variables just as we did before, and I can still do some formatting or precision levels with the print statements as well. And off they go here. Notice I have the /n, our new line characters, in there to separate them out, and that's what we end up with here. We can use the upper and the precisions inside the print formatted print statements. Again, this could be any method, text method we have there. I'll put a link in to show you the different options for those methods. Um, and of course, we can do, as I did up here, we can do some printing with the setting the precision level for exponential um, or scientific method for floating points as well. And again, we'll do the same thing down here, and we can add text inside and then use the print statement, the curly braces to get the variable that we want to print inside there. So we can use that straight variable here from a variable that's listed as our global variable or a local variable if this is inside a function somewhere. And there are all the results. If we look at some of the string variables, this is looking at some other, the strip method. So if we make 4 different quotes here, and this is one with no extra spaces, quote 2 has extra spaces to the left, quote 1 has extra spaces to the left, quote 2 has extra spaces to the right, and quote 3 has extra spaces to the left and right. If we print those, you will see the spaces come out on the screen. They're part of the things that gets printed, so they're on the screen. If we use the rstrip method, you can see what happens for the rstrip method. We take out the extra spaces on the right. You can see they are now bunched up against the right where we had spaces before. So right here we had the right spaces, and they are now pushed right up against the text. So rstrip takes out spaces on the right side of the text. And if we do an lstrip, guess what's going to happen? We're going to strip the spaces all off the left-hand side of the text string, but the right-hand spaces are still left there. And if we do a strip with either not just a plain old strip, not an lstrip or an rstrip, guess what? It takes out spaces before or after the text. So oftentimes when you're working with data that you're pulling in from some data file, you're going to need to strip the data, either rstrip or lstrip, or sometimes, basically, mostly you're going to want to just strip the data. Sometimes you're going to want to just do an rstrip or an lstrip if you want to keep the spaces on the left or the right for some other reason. If you have a large string, or a sentence for that matter, it doesn't have to be a large string, and you want to split it where the spaces occur, you can use the split method. And sure enough, we take the quote, which is the first one, and we use the split method, and it spits out a result which goes into our list here, and we get a list of every word that is split along with input. This can be, again, very useful if you're reading a text string in and want to process that text. Instead of processing along looking for spaces, you can just automatically break it at all the spaces into a list. So those are, but it also, as I want to do with the rstrip and lstrip, you usually use when you're going to be printing the data. So I included it in this section as well.